Hey, boys and girls. This is chapter 8. It's called The TV Star. Okay, Aunt Linda is Mother's sister. She lives in Boston. Last week, she had a baby girl. So now I have a new cousin. My mother decided to fly to Boston to see Aunt Linda and the new baby. I'll only be gone for the weekend, my mother told me. I was sitting on her bed watching her pack. I know, I said. Daddy will take care of you and Fudge. I know, I said again. Are you sure you'll be all right? She asked me. Sure, why not? Will you help Daddy with Fudge? Sure, Mom, don't worry. I'm not worrying. It's just that Daddy is so, well, he doesn't know much about taking care of children. Then she closed her suitcase. We'll be fine, Mom, I said. I was really looking forward to the weekend. My father doesn't care about keeping things neat. He never examines me to see if I'm clean, and he lets me stay up late at night. On Friday morning, all four of us rode down in the elevator to say goodbye to Mother. Henry looked at the suitcase. You going away, Mr. Hatcher? He asked. My mother answered, No, I am, Henry. My sister just had her first baby. I'm flying to Boston for the weekend to help out. New baby? Fudge said. Baby, baby, baby. Nobody paid any attention to him. Sometimes my brother just talks to hear the sound of his own voice. Have a nice visit, Mrs. Hatcher, Henry told my mother when we reached the lobby. Thank you, Henry, my mother said. Keep an eye on my family for me. Will do, Mrs. Hatcher, Henry said, giving my father a wink. Outside, my father hailed a taxi. He put the suitcase in first, then held the door for my mother. When she was settled in the cab, my father said, Don't worry about us. We'll be just fine. Just fine? Just fine, Mommy, Fudge yelled. Bye, Mom. See you Sunday, I said. My mother blew us kisses. Then her cab drove away. My father sighed while Fudge jumped up and down, calling, Bye, Mommy. Bye. 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 I had no school that day. The teachers were at a special meeting, so my father said he'd take me and Fudge to the office with him. My father's office is a huge building made of almost all glass. It's really a busy place. You never see people just sitting quietly at desks. Everyone's always rushing around. A person could get lost in there. My father has a private office and his own secretary. Her name is Janet, and she's very pretty. I especially like her hair. It's thick and black. She has the longest eyelashes I've ever seen. Once I heard my mother say, Janet must have to get up at the crack of dawn to put on her face. My father just laughed when my mother said it. Janet's seen me before, but this was her first meeting with Fudge. I was glad his hair was finally growing back. I explained right off about his teeth. He'll look a lot better when he's older, I said. He knocked out his two front teeth, but when he's 6 or 7, he'll get new ones. See? Fudge said, opening his mouth. All gone. My father said, Janet, the boys are going to be here for the morning. Can you amuse them while I clear up some work? Certainly, Mr. Hatcher, Janet said. You go ahead into your office, and I'll take the boys on a tour of the rest of the agency. As soon as my father went into his private office, Janet took out her pocketbook. She reached in and came out with a hairbrush, some lipstick, and a bag of crackers. You want some? She asked me and Fudge. Okay, I said, taking a handful. Fudge did the same. The crackers were shaped like little goldfish. I nibbled while Janet fixed herself up. She had a big folding mirror in her desk drawer. She set it on top of her desk and went to work on herself. When she was finished, she looked exactly the same as when we came in. But I guess she didn't think so because she said, That's much better. Then she put all her stuff away and took me by one hand and Fudge by the other. We walked down a long hall through a doorway and into another section of the agency. We came to a room where there were a bunch of kids with mothers. I guess there was at least 50 of them. Most of the kids were kind of small, like Fudge. Some were crying. Is this a nursery school or something? I asked Janet. She laughed. They're here to try out for the new Toddle Bike commercial. You mean they all want to be the kid who rides the Toddle Bike on TV? Yes. Well, at least their mothers want them to be picked, Janet said. But but we can only use one. You mean only one out of all these kids is going to be picked? That's right, Janet said. Who picks him? I asked. Your father and Mr. Denver are doing it. But of course, Mr. Vincent, the president of the Toddle Bike Company, has to approve. Just then, a door opened and a secretary came out. Next, she called to the waiting kids. My Murray's next, a mother said. Oh, no, he's not, another mother called. Sally is next. Ladies, please, you'll all have a turn, the secretary said. Murray got to be next. He was a little red-headed kid. He wasn't in the other room for 2 minutes when the door opened and a big man with a cigar in his mouth came out. No, 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 he shouted. He's not the type at all. Murray was crying. His mother yelled at the big man. What do you know anyway? You wouldn't know a treasure if you found one. She shook her fist at him. Janet whispered to me, That's Mr. Vincent, the president of Tuttlebike. Mr. Vincent walked to the center of the room. He looked around at all the kids. When he looked over at us, he pointed and called, There he is. That's the kid I want. I thought he meant me. I got excited. I could just see myself on TV riding the toddle bike. All my friends would turn on their sets and say, Hey, look, there's Peter. While I was thinking about that, what fun it would be, Mr. Vincent came over to us and grabbed Fudge. He lifted him up. Perfect, he cried. He's perfect. The mothers who were waiting picked up their kids and left right away. Mr. Vincent took off with Fudge in his arms. Janet chased him. She called, But, Mr. Vincent, you don't understand. I ran after Janet. Mr. Vincent carried Fudge into the other room. He announced, I found him myself, the perfect kid to ride the toddle bike in my new commercial. Mr. Vincent put Fudge down and took the cigar out of his mouth. There were two other men in the room. One of them was Mr. Denver. The other one was my father. Hi, Daddy, Fudge said. George, my father told Mr. Vincent, this is my son. He's no actor or model. He can't make your toddle bike commercial. He doesn't have to be an actor or a model. He's perfect the way he is. Mr. Vincent insisted. Now look, George. We want to make the best possible commercial for your company. But Fudge can't be the boy to ride the toddle bike. Now you listen, Hatcher. Mr. Vincent raised his voice. I wondered why he called my father Hatcher, just like Mr. Yarby did. Mr. Vincent pointed to Fudge. Either that kid rides my toddle bike, or I take my account to another advertising agency. It's that simple. My father looked at Mr. Denberg. It's your decision, Warren, Mr. Denberg told my father. I don't want to be the one to tell you what to do. My father picked up Fudge and held him on his lap. Would you like to ride the toddle bike, Fudge? It's just like the one you have at home. Why are you asking him? I said. What does he know about making commercials? My father acted like he'd forgotten I was even around. I'm thinking, Peter, he said. Please, be quiet. Well, Hatcher, Mr. Vincent said, what would it be? This kid of yours? Or do I move to another agency? I remembered how my father lost the Juicy O account because of Fudge. Now, maybe he'd lose this one too. And I don't think he can afford that. Finally, my father said, All right, George, you can use him. On one condition, though. What's that, Hatcher? Mr. Vincent asked. The commercial has to be made this afternoon. After today, My son Fudge won't be available. That's fine with me, Hatcher, Mr. Vincent said. Is he going to get paid? I asked my father. I'll worry about that, Peter, my father said. That probably meant yes. He'd be paid and have lots of money in the bank. I'd have nothing. And someday I'd have to borrow from him. No, wait a minute, never. I'll never borrow money from Fudge. I'll starve first. Can I at least watch when they make the commercial? I asked. Certainly, my father said. You can watch the whole thing. I turned to Mr. Denberg. Fudge be famous? I asked. No, not famous, but a lot of people will think he looks familiar, Mr. Denberg said. I turned to Mr. Vincent. Do you know he has no front top teeth? That's part of his charm, Mr. Vincent said. And he cut off all his hair 2 months ago. Well, he looks fine now, Mr. Vincent said. And he can't even talk in long sentences yet. I told everyone in the room. He doesn't have to say a word, Mr. Vincent told me. Let's see what happens. Okay, for the questions for chapter 8, part 1, where is Mrs. Hatcher going? Why? Number 2, name 2 things Peter likes about his dad taking care of them. Number 3, read the following excerpt. Finally, my father said, all right, George, you can use him on one condition, though. Why do you think Mr. Hatcher set up a condition? Number 4, what do you think will happen when Fudge begins filming the commercial? Okay, so we'll talk about these tomorrow, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.